Hey guys, Kinggath here. Today I'm going to start the Builder's Toolkit video tutorial series. So if you're interested in adding your own things to sim settlements, this is where you're going to want to start. And I'd recommend, even if you're just casually interested and you're not sure if you want to commit to the process, watch this video and you can kind of get an idea of how simple it is to start adding your own things. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the toolkit as if I were one of the end users, so you guys can see from kind of beginning it to end on how to do it. But I probably will skip around to get for video purposes, just because it'll be a little more interesting. And so this is going to be kind of a companion series to go with the toolkit. So this you could probably get away with just following the videos and learning from those, but I'd highly recommend after you do so, you then also go back and read through the PDFs that are included in the toolkit, as those will give you some details that maybe I kind of rush past while doing these videos. So to get started, you just download manually from the Nexus mods page, and this toolkit is primarily a set of PDFs, but there are also some other goodies in there, things to help you release your mod, some image files to use to let users know that this is a Sim Settlements add-on pack that you've created. And then in the future, I'm actually getting permissions from some other mod authors to use some of their assets, so we can expand kind of the range of building materials we have to work with. And so I'll be releasing some resources in there regarding that as well. So the toolkit is going to be updated regularly, probably around once a week. So if you're already using it and you haven't updated, you might want to grab that. Not only do I add new resources, I add new little tutorials, etc. So I'm going to assume you've downloaded that, you've got it extracted. And we're going to just jump right in. You're going to want to go right into the tutorial PDFs. Now, for today's video, I'm not going to do the Creation Kit 101 or the Getting Started tutorials. If any of one would like me to do those in video format, just please leave a comment requesting as much. But for this first video, I want to show you guys how to create your own building right from the get-go, because I think that's the most rewarding part, because you actually get to see something that you spent your time creating in the game in a single session. So pop open that 02 creating your first building, and we're going to go through there. And like I said, I'm going to skip around a bit. I'm not going to read through this. That would be very boring. So I'm going to just keep checking it to make sure I'm doing steps in the same order that you're expecting. But I'm not going to actually go step by step through this. I think also it will be helpful because I'm going to be talking while I'm building and doing things like that. So I might actually reveal some tips that I hadn't even thought to include when I wrote these tutorials initially. Also, if the video kind of fades in and out, that's just because I need some breaks in between talking. This tutorial video will probably be quite long, but it's very simple. And I'm going to do all of my building as quickly as possible, so none of these buildings I create during this are going to be particularly fancy. They're just to show you guys the process. So don't be concerned if I'm making ugly buildings in this. They're not meant for release. They're literally just to kind of show you the tools, how you use them, and the steps involved. And like I said before, I'm going to skip around a bit. So at this point, I'm going to assume you've already done the Getting Started guide, which just walks you through installing all the software we need, getting some settings configured, and making sure you have Sim Settlements installed. You're most likely going to always work on the latest version of Sim Settlements, so check for those updates on the regular if you're going to be using the Builder's Toolkit. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to come up to File, Data. And I'm going to talk from the perspective of an absolute beginner. So I apologize to those of you who are familiar with the Creation Kit. I think it's best that I go at the slower pace and make sure that there's one video to rule them all, if you will, so that I don't have to keep recording this over and over again for various skill levels. So the first thing you do is load up this data file, and now, this data window. Now this data window is showing you all of the different files available that have records in them that kind of link everything together. So by default, the Creation Kit is just a tool. It doesn't specify a specific game. It doesn't have any of the game files. And these ESM and ESP files you see here basically link all of the little pieces together. They tie in the model files, the textures, the sounds, etc. They tie it all together in a way that the Fallout 4 engine can run them. So what we're going to do for your first time, if this is your first time making a SimSettlements add-on, what you're going to want to do is double-click SimSettlements and then press OK. Now this will take about a minute, and what happens down here, you'll see the loading files. This is just loading up all of the game files, and then it's going to load up all, and that means the base game files. Then it loads up the files that SimSettlements adds, excuse me, and then you'll be able to create your actual plugin. Now, after you have your plugin created, when you do this load section, you'll do it a little bit differently, and I'm going to go through all that right now. But you'll actually be able to tab out of the creation kit and go work on something else, go surf the web or whatever, and the creation kit will actually prompt you when it's finished loading. But when you just load an ESM file, it does not do that prompt, so you might as well just sit and wait for it, because or you can just tab back and forth, that's up to you, but you don't get the easy notification for your first load, which is unfortunate, but that's what we've got. So so you can see it's validating forms, basically checking for corruption, making sure for looking for any files that maybe are overwriting the base game files, which SimSettlements does not do, but it still does those checks anyway. All right, and now we're in. So once you've got that loaded in, if you're familiar with the creation kit, but maybe you've never loaded in a third-party ESM file, you'll notice that there's nothing up here telling you what the file name is. That is normal. So the first thing we want to do now is we're going to create our plugin. So you hit save, and then you're just going to name your file. So I'm going to just call this BTK for Builder's Toolkit tutorial. Oh, microphone's going to be shaking like mad. I better move this a little bit. Okay, so once you've got this saved, you'll see up here in the upper left-hand corner, we've now got our ESP name. So that means that your file is saved, it's loaded, and now every change you make in here anywhere will be saved to this ESP. And what this does is it prevents you from literally overwriting the Fallout 4 files, and that the changes that you make will only appear inside of your ESP file. So now I'm going to show you guys what it looks like to load your data file directly. So I'm probably going to snip here. All right, so what I did was I snipped the video so that I could close the creation kit, reopen it. So I want to show you guys what you'll do in the future. Let's say you've finished going through the tutorial, you've saved your mod, you've closed the creation kit, and you want to load back in and work some more on your add-on file. Here's how you load it the second time. So that first time, all you're doing is loading that ESM file. The second time, you go down to the very bottom, and it won't always be at the bottom. This is just the order that those files are, the date order of those files. So most likely, right, the first time you do this, yours will be at the very bottom, and then as you install more mods or create more, they'll push this up slowly, but look for yours, double click it to check it in, and then hit set as active file. And that makes it so that that's what I was talking about earlier, where anything that you do while you're in the creation kit will get saved to the active file. So, and you'll notice on the right here, the parent masters, that it requires Fallout 4 and SimSettlements. And also, while you're here, you can go ahead and fill in your created by, and that will just show the name of the person who created this inside the creation kit if anyone else decides to open your ESP and take a look at what you've done. So then you just hit OK, and now this is what I was talking about, where you can go off and do something else, and this loading screen it'll pop up a prompt telling you that the file's loaded. So I'm going to go ahead and snip from there, and then I'll come back when that's loaded. All right, well, the creation kit just made a liar out of me. So it turns out that the OK message doesn't prompt every single time. It may have to do with a certain file size, but often you'll get a handle on how long the creation kit takes to load. It's a long enough time where you'll generally have a few minutes to go surf the net for a bit while you wait for it to load. But so you'll notice a lot of mod authors, if you were to watch them making videos, you'd see they just have the creation kit running at all times because of this. So we're going to go ahead and start working on our first building. So I'm not going to go over the specifics of all this. I'm not going to train you on that. That is covered in the Creation Kit 101 tutorial. I may make a video about that if enough people request it, but just so you know, there are already a great sets of tutorials out there that'll teach you the movement, teach you how the Creation Kit works. Check out the video series by DarkFox127 for Skyrim. He is a fantastic teacher. He's got hundreds of videos, and while they are for Skyrim, the tool is very, very similar, and a lot of the information you learn from that will carry over to modding in Fallout 4. So I will cover some of this just while talking through this, but I'm not going to go in depth. So down in the cell view here, you're going to want to make sure world space is on interiors. And then if you click down anywhere in here, you can start typing in the letter of a cell you want. So we're going to type in K because I've set up all of my cells with kgsim as the prefix. If you read through the tutorials you've already read, you'll know I really harp on the prefix. I think it's really important. Whoa, excuse me, a little hiccup there. Really important that you pick a prefix that no one else will do. So I tend to try and do at least 3 letters because there's so many mods out there that pretty much every 2-letter combination has been used already. So come up with a prefix that you can put in front of everything you create in the creation kit, and that way, if somebody wants to load up multiple ESP files at the same time, your stuff will be easily separate, and then it's real easy to find your things via filtering, which you'll see I'll use down the line. But so we're going to open up this kgsim building stage, and now what this is a cell I've set up to handle an odd issue. So we're going to be using a method called static collection creation, or scalls. We'll go with scalls because I don't have to say this aloud. So scall creation can sometimes force physics to happen, even though I've got this physics button turned off. And so while we're doing the process, your model could just suddenly fall down into the world, into the abyss forever, into this gray nothingness. And so this literally is to catch your building if something goes wrong, so that you don't have to go scroll down and fish it out. So that is why that platform is there. So the first thing we're going to do, I mentioned in the tutorials and the PDF that there's a layer here that you're going to want to start using. Well, I've since found out, since writing those, that the layer only sticks around if there's something in it. And since I deleted the items out of the layer before I release this to you guys, you're going to have to manually create the layer. But luckily, it's actually still there. We just type in the same name. So we're going to type in editor helpers. It actually doesn't matter. You're free to name this whatever you like. But that's what we're going to be putting in there, is these helpers to make building SimSettlements objects easier. So we're going to go ahead and create that, and you're going to get a thing saying it already exists. Yes, we want to use that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up a helper object. Now what this helper object is going to do is make sure that we don't go too large outside of our plots. If you've never played SimSettlements yet and you're jumping right to this, I suggest you go spend a few minutes to play with the mod a little bit, so you know what I'm talking about. But we're gonna find these. Actually, we're gonna just go ahead and search for. You'll see up here. You'll notice I was talking about the filtering. When I filter, I can easily find everything that I've added to the game, whereas if I didn't have this search in there, it actually brings up everything not only in my mod file and SimSettlements and the game itself. So literally there's thousands of these files, and it can be a real pain to find things. So doing that prefix is a fantastic way to speed up searching through all these things. So we're going to find something called an editor helper. So we're going to start with a house. So we're going to find the residential editor helper, and we're going to just drag this in here. And now we're going to double click it, and we want to position this at 0. We just put all zeros in here. We want all zeros in our XYZ position, and the rotation will default to zeros, but if you had happened to right drag by accident, you might have rotated it. So get everything to 0. It just makes it easier to work with. And then you'll see it's a little bit floating up above this platform here. If you don't see this green base and this little man working here, just push the M key on your keyboard. That will toggle those. So now we want to move this onto the editor helper layer. So we select it there. We select the editor helper layer and hit add selection to layer. And you'll notice the number will increment right there to show that you pulled that off. So now we've got our basic setup here. And now I'm going to go ahead and create another layer to hold our actual building. I don't know if this is done in the tutorial, but I'm just going to do it now. So we're going to just say test building. And by keeping things in layers, if you've never used Photoshop or anything like that, it just keeps it organized and ensures that we can quickly find these things later. And what I like to do is use the layers as a means of hiding things. So, for example, we can turn that editor layer off, or the helper layer off, so we can see our building in all its glory when we get to that point, etc. So now we're going to, next to test building, we're going to click this little A right here. Now what this does is it makes it so that every new item we drag into the render window here will default onto that layer, because we want everything on this building. So now we need another helper object. So we're going to go down to static here, and we're going to type kgsim, and I'm going to use an asterisk. An asterisk is just a wildcard in between, in case you can't remember. For example, I couldn't remember exactly what this was called. We're going to type in align, and you'll see here we've got a kgsim alignment helper, and this is a very important piece we need for building scalls for sim settlements. So bring that in, and then again set it to 0, 0, 0. The zeros will make a lot of sense in a future video, but for now, just know that that's pretty important that you do that. So, all right, so now we've got our helper in here. We can actually hide our editor helper because this will serve the same purpose. The reason to put that in, to have this here, is that when you're building, you want to make sure that you're not overflowing onto this utility pole. So depending on whether you're building an agricultural, commercial, etc., you'd want to use the respective editor helper so that you can make sure you're building, you can maximize all this space, but you don't want to overlap this guy, and especially up on the higher floors. I know in the current build of Sim Settlements, the connect point on the homes is right here, which is kind of obnoxious. I've actually moved it out here in the next version, which should be out in a day or two, but by the time you've seen this, that won't even be relevant. But so that is useful to make sure you're not covering up that power pole. All right, so that's the basic setup. Now we're ready to build our first building. Now, in the PDF tutorials, I essentially give you some tips and set you free to just kind of play with Legos here. But for this, for the sake of the video tutorial, I'm actually going to walk you through and I'm going to build something real basic here. So first thing to note, though, before I get started, is that arrow represents two things. One is it's telling you the direction the building will be built, so that's what the player expects. So you should probably acknowledge that. Like, while you could build your door back here or over here, there's a chance that your player is going to build up stuff or snap other plots to that, and then your NPCs are never going to be able to get in. So what I tend to do is either keep the door on the front here, or maybe use keep a path. So maybe I only build over in this section, and then I leave a path so they can walk along here. I hope you guys can see my mouse. Walk along here and get to the back door. So you want to treat this, the square part of this plot, as your build, as your the extent of your build area. The other part the arrow represents is that from the base of it to the point, this area up in the front here, that is the area that Sim Settlements uses to place furniture markers for your guys to hammer away. During build phases, we place a sleeping bag here, so that way players who are using the realistic build times aren't short on beds and having their happiness dump into the crapper. And it's also kind of where the power pole is. So that area up there should be reserved. You can go over it into a little. You'll see that on some of the building models in the core of Sim Settlements. I know, like the Wasteland Lounger model, the chair kind of clips into that a little bit, but I would be very, very careful in your use of that frontal space. You're going to want to focus on this. There's actually nothing, no hard limiters. There's nothing in the mod that prevents you from building all the way outside and filling up the size of a settlement with your building, but it's just rude to the players, and then they're not going to want to use your building anymore. So we're going to go ahead and head over to the static objects. And then the search I like to do, I think this is the easiest to get started with, is to do, you're going to do workshop, and then a star, and then shack. And now these are pretty much all the pieces that you have available to you while you're in workshop mode. So you'll be pretty comfortable with them. You know what they look like from building other buildings within the game. And the other good thing is that all of these pieces are actual 3D. You'll find out as you're digging through the statics that there's a lot of pieces that are kind of faked, where they've only got texture on one side and the other side's invisible. So these are great for using that. So we're going to start out by finding some floors here, and we're going to just build ourselves a real rudimentary shack. Now, this alignment helper, I told you that it's for marking off the plot, but it actually serves another purpose. You'll notice when I drop a floor on here, it lines itself up perfectly so that the bottom of the floor is sticking out just a little bit, which is actually what we want. We want the floor to sink a little bit below this, because this vertical space here is actually used to help with the snap points, and it's actually included in the game. So your model will actually appear exactly in the game on the plot the way it is right here that you're seeing on this helper. So if I didn't have this thing, if I didn't have this helper here, so we're going to hide it by pushing 1 twice. If I were to drag in a floor into the world, it gets placed in a random position at a random height, and then you have to like hold Z and move it around. Whereas if you keep and I pressed Alt 1 there to get everything I hid back. If you drag it into this helper, the way I designed this helper is such that the floors will sit perfectly within it. So it's a really useful tool, and I highly recommend it. And one thing you can do if it feels like it's getting in your way, you can do 2 things. You can press M to hide it temporarily. So like now that we've got this out there, we want to slide it over. We can push M again and just keep sliding it around, and M to hide it and unhide it. So we're going to just build a real basic shack in the corner of here. We're not going to do anything too fancy. We're going to find some walls. And you can continue filtering up here. I like to do this would be then type in wall. And then we'll just grab some pieces and just kind of snap them into place wherever. And now, like I said, the CK, as far as teaching you all the commands and stuff, I'm probably going to keep mentioning a few of them. But all this movement and stuff, you're going to want to pick up by checking out the CK 101 tutorial or watching some YouTubers who can walk you through that. But I'm just kind of throwing pieces together to just show you guys some quick things. This is a cool trick, because if you hold Alt and roll your mouse wheel, you can actually scroll through models in real time so that we can find objects we want even quicker. So and you can also use the double click to bring up the reference and do detailed entries. So if you want something to be in exact 90-degree increments, you can do that. There's all sorts of cool little tricks you can do with the creation kit. But all we're doing is we're literally, like I think I've mentioned many times, that it's a lot like building with Legos, because you're just finding pieces you like and just kind of snapping them into place. And the mouse wheel trick is, you're seeing, it's a favorite of mine to use to save some time, because trying to memorize all these different names is kind of a hassle. So doing that is awesome, especially because it does it alphabetically based on kind of the area in the within the statics you're in. So once you're already in the workshop pieces, by scrolling with the mouse wheel, it does find all the ones that are also in that same general vicinity. All right, so it looks like we need a few more floor pieces here. So let's get some of these little guys. And just like I said before, we hit M, we can get that thing out of the way. Some of the floor pieces sink in a little lower than others, so if you want to be a perfectionist, you can come in real close and really tweak where they're at right now. Let's see, and we can even duplicate pieces, just use the same piece. There's also, again, it's such an easy tool to use once you learn all the little parts of it. So I'd highly recommend going through that tutorial and maybe watch some people like Dark Fox, or if you want Fallout 4 specific, I would check out Sedden4494. He does some real basic Fallout 4 tutorials in the creation kit, and they were great help to get started, so that you can learn about the differences between some of the stuff you do in Skyrim versus what you do in Fallout. But yeah, we just keep adding these pieces here. Now I'm not even going to do a complete house, just because I don't want to bore you guys to death. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw a roof on this, and we'll say that this guy just decided that 3 walls was enough. So let's get a roof up here. Sure, why not? Why not a metal roof? There's nothing says we have to use all this corrugated garbage, especially because these guys are scrappy. One of the things you'll see I mentioned throughout the tutorials is that if you want to follow the Sim Settlements kind of art direction, I kind of just basically tried to keep everything feeling like that, like the workshop mode with the settler's kind of just building with whatever they could get their hands on. If you want to follow that kind of guideline, the workshop pieces are a great way to do that. But you're definitely not limited to. I know I've talked to several people working on the Builder's Toolkit who have said they're interested in kind of doing like Brotherhood of Steel theme or a Raider theme, etc. And you are absolutely welcome to do that. But if you're looking to contribute directly to the mod, you want to see your building included in one of the patches, I do request that you follow the basic Fallout 4 style. So there's some guidelines inside those PDFs that you guys can check out if you're looking to contribute directly to the mod. All right, so this will work. This is our real basic rudimentary shack. Guy ran out of materials, couldn't put a third wall on. Maybe he'll do that for his level 2 upgrade. So, all right, so once you've got your basic building done and you're ready to export it, we're gonna do something called SCOL creation. It's actually SCOL, and when you see people, especially when you get working with different mod authors, you'll start seeing them refer to things by a 4-letter combination, and I'm trying to see where that is. But there's essentially like a shortcut for all the different types of objects in the game. For example, if you see somebody talking about a C-obj, that's a constructible object. There's these form type shortcuts, or a stat is a static, etc. So for the models we're making, which are static collections, which just basically means a combined set of statics, is SCOL. So we're calling those SCOLs. Now, I just realized I forgot something, and it's not important for this for the tutorial as far to do it for this particular building. But if you have any large static pieces of furniture, especially those near walls and stuff, it's a good time to actually put those in during this step. Like if you want, say, maybe you want to stick a table over here or some shelves against the wall, those are great to bake into the model. They make adding your navigation in one of the later steps really easy. But for our sake of just doing the tutorial of showing you that anything in this static menu, you can basically plop into here. There are a few exceptions, and I go over those in the PDF. Things like animated objects won't work, and so be sure to check that out. So we're going to go ahead and start with our first creation of our model. So what you're going to want to do is position the window so that you're not going to grab these cement blocks by accident. Ooh, excuse me, I really got the hiccups today. You're going to drag a box and grab everything. And now you have to do something that seems a little odd, but you're going to want to position again your camera so that you can see this arrow. You're going to hold Control, click it, and you'll notice down here something I've done in the cell view window. If you set this on selected only, it makes this a lot easier so that you can see exactly which pieces that are in your current selection. And you'll notice that the KGSim alignment helper is no longer there. Then we're going to hold Control and click it again, and now it's back. So the reason we did that is when you do an SCAL creation, the very last object that you select becomes your origin. And the origin determines where, when it gets placed in the game, where everything gets aligned to. So if we were to leave this as the, say for example, or let's say we use the roof as the origin, the whole building would get placed in the game with the roof being at the base of the plot, and then your building would be underground. So that's the actual most important part of these alignment helpers, is by having a piece that's aligned up to 0. And it actually doesn't even have to be this alignment helper. It could be anything at all that's aligned up perfectly with the plot. This is just the one that makes the most sense. And then that will make sure that your building appears correctly. Now, you'll notice that this thing is kind of see-through, and that's because it's marked as an editor helper. It's the same with these dots here that are everywhere. They're just little pieces to give you some ideas of how this is going to function in the game. If we hit the M key, that all disappears, and this is actually what will show up in the game, excluding, obviously, all the things that appear because I have selected. But so if you want to see what your building is going to look like in the game, make sure you push the M key to make all those things hide, and you can see exactly what will appear in game. So let's get back. Let's do that again. We select everything, hold Control to deselect the alignment helper, make sure it disappeared from your selection down in the cell view window, and then click it again. And now we're going to right click and hit Make Static Collection. Now, one warning, there's actually a shortcut to do this, which I never remember, but I posted it throughout the tutorial so that you guys could hopefully learn it, and I'm actually going to double check it right now because I want to get used to using it. And the reason is if you right click, when you're right clicking, one of the things you can do in the creation kit is you can rotate by holding the right click. And we want our things, as I said, to be defaulted to a 0 rotation, or you end up with orientation problems in game that are hard to compensate for. So we're going to pop in. If you open up the creation kit 101, there's a section near the bottom that is called hotkey references, and it shows you some of the common hotkeys you'll need for moving around in the game. So if we come down here, we've got Alt-O to create an SCAL and Alt-U to fragment, which you'll need the fragment later, but for now we're just concerned with Alt plus O. And then it's going to ask you for a collection name. So like I mentioned before, and I harp throughout the PDFs, is come up with your own prefix and then add that to the beginning of anything you create in the creation kit. So we're going to call this tutorial house stage 1. Now we'll call this level 1, because that's another thing is you have to keep in mind, and that's, I hope you guys have played through some settlements, is that you're building each of the levels for the house in here, and so you're going to want to come up with some sort of naming scheme so that you can organize them. So maybe use level 1 to level 1, level 2, level 3 for your 3 upgrade levels. And maybe you do, instead of level, you do building stage for those construction stages, which those will be covered in a future video. But for now, we're just worried about, just for organization purposes, just come up with some sort of naming scheme that makes sense to you. So we're going to do house level 1. And then for this object window filter, what this would let you do is filter out a specific set of items based on what you typed in name. I don't find it particularly useful, so you can just push OK to that. And now you'll notice that down in our window here, it's now green. It changed to this SC instead of these typical blue static items. So those green SCs basically tell you that that's a static collection. Now, if you were, you cannot use a static collection inside of another static collection. If you want to use a green piece, so if you're searching in here, so let's just type in, let's see, I should be able to find some under workshop. We're looking for a green item here. No, of course we can't find one. Let's see, let's go with building. Here we go. Okay, so if you find something in here you like, and you drag it in here, and you want to, oh wow, this would be a heck of a thing to use. So if you find something, here it is. If you find something that you want to use obviously we can't use this monstrosity on a tiny plot, but if you find one of these green ones you want to use, that's when you use that Alt-U key. It's going to ask you if you want to fragment it. You say yes, and that breaks it down into its tiny little pieces. And then those are essentially the same as these pieces, or I'm sorry, as the pieces we use, the Lego pieces we use to build. A static collection, like I said, is just a combination of smaller pieces, and then you can actually use the individual pieces of it, or use them all as is. For example, there are shelves in here. So if we type in shelf, or it's probably shelf with a F. There are some wood shelves. Let's find you guys. So if we bring in these wood shelves, so we get right in close, you notice they look like a single piece, but they're actually made up of a bunch of little pieces. So one thing you can do is hit that Alt-U to fragment it, say yes, and now you'll see it's a bunch of smaller pieces. Like there's the pieces of wood in the middle, there's the brackets, but we can just ignore all those and just select all that. Now that we've broken that up, we could actually select it all and use it as part of a new SCall. So that all that type of thing is covered way more in depth inside of those PDF tutorials, and that's why this is kind of a companion video, and why you should plan on doing both. Okay, so now that we've got, I'm trying to Alt Z or Control Z to undo all this stuff. Oh, and I crashed the creation kit. Okay, so crashing the creation kit. This is great that happened. The creation kit crashes all the time, so you should get in the habit of hitting that save button quite frequently. And now don't let that scare you away. It's not like you're going to be constantly, I guess all the time is excessive, but I would say at least once per session while you're using the creation kit, you're gonna arrange for it to crash. So get in the habit of hitting that save button. So since I didn't save our quick little building model, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the video, rebuild that real quick, and catch you guys back here. All right, so good habits actually saved me. I must have been hitting Control S and saving because the building was still there after I reloaded. So get in the habit of that, lots of saves, and you'll be good to go. So we've got our SCall created. So what we're going to do now is double click this and then hit edit base. And then you guys are going to check. This is how you check to make sure everything works. So the first thing to do is kind of just drag this thing around and make sure you didn't miss any pieces. That's something that can commonly happen. Maybe your drag box didn't get a wall or something. Excuse me, and if that happens, you can just fragment this and try it again. And then the second thing you want to do is make sure KGSim alignment helper is selected and that all of these are zeros. You should only have a 1 in the scale, but your rotation and position should all be zeros. As long as that's the case, it means you correctly selected that last, and so that is your origin. So we've got that, we're good to go. So then the next thing we do is we're going to hit recreate NIF from data. Now what this does is it's going to create and you can hit OK here. Create the actual model file so that we can do some editing to it and actually make sure that this is going to function in the game correctly, as well as turn it into what's called a static object instead of our SCall, which the game definitely prefers. So this right here is the path where your model is going to end up. So if we open up, we're going to go to, there's my video collection. We're going to go to, not my porn collection, my video collection. We're going to go to our Fallout 4 directory, data. Let's see here. And then we want to go to meshes, and then that's where it starts. So all model files are stored under Fallout 4 data meshes, and then this path right here. So it starts with SCOL for SCall. Then it'll go inside of an ESP file or inside a folder named after your ESP file, and then you'll see there's our matching model. So what I like to do is I just Control X to cut this because we don't need to leave this in here anymore. Now we're going to come up to meshes, and then you guys are going to want to create yourself a folder. So I'm going to create a folder. We're going to call it, again, BTK for Builder's Toolkit, Tutorials. And you're gonna just keep, and anytime you add anything to the game, whether it be a texture or a sound file or anything, you'll go under the appropriate folder. So these core game folders you don't want to mess with, you'll go inside of them and then create yourself a folder, and that's where you want to keep all your stuff. It makes it way easier to package up your mod for release down the line, as opposed to having to filter through all of the other mod files that or other files other modders have released, files from your own other mods, etc. So this is a great habit to get into, is to create a separate folder for each mod file you're creating whenever you add an asset. So now we're going to give this a better name, just because that doesn't mean anything. So we'll just go ahead and copy this name right here. This is a perfectly good name to use for the model so that they match up. And now keep in mind that, so these ID fields right here, I keep referring to them as the name. They're actually the ID field, and that has to be absolutely unique throughout the creation kits, or throughout your mod. So and throughout any of Fallout 4's files. So any file that is a parent of this, you have to make sure you use a unique name for this. So that will come into play in a few minutes. So once we've got this set up, we've got our file names and everything. Now I've got it set up so that I can double click on them to load NifScope. So you can do that by just double clicking on the file, and Windows will offer you to find the program. Otherwise, you're going to want to open NifScope and then open up this file, so that we can do some real simple changes to this. So now there are a lot of things you can do in NifScope, but for our sake, as long as you're on 2.0 pre-alpha 6, the simple act of saving will do one of the most important things, and that's that inside of here there's all these different nodes that make up your model, and you'll notice right here they say txt, and then they all have the number 2 there. Now next to each of these there's normally a name. You'll see some of these, like we have this physics merged, and the physics merged is why we're using this scall creation tool in the creation kit, is because it takes all of the physics that are baked into each of these models and combines them into a single thing. So that way when you shoot this metal roof or walk across it, it'll make sounds of metal, and when you shoot or walk across these wood floors, they will make wood sounds and wood decals. So it's really cool that does that, whereas I know there's a lot of tutorials out there about building combined models in Outfit Studio, which is another way you can go, but it doesn't create this merged physics object, which is really handy. So getting back to the point, I apologize, I'm kind of a rambler. You may not know that from most of my videos because I keep them all short, but if given the opportunity, I will talk nonstop. So each of these essentially needs a name, and that will normally appear here. So rather than spending the time of going through and naming them all, what the newest version of NifScope does is just gives them a generic name, generic number as a name. So if we hit save, it's going to give you a thing, one or more blocks had their names sanitized, and you'll notice now all of a sudden these have their ID numbers, the 3, as their name. So and that is an awesome, helpful tool just to speed up this process so that you don't have corrupted model files that have basic names. You're obviously welcome to come in here and give each of these a name, but the time that takes is quite exhausting. So this is a great shortcut for this. So we're going to make heavy use of that throughout building SimSettlements model. So once you've saved that, you're basically done. You can close NifScope. There's a lot of other things we'll do in NifScope down the line, especially when we get into collision and navigation in the later tutorials. But for our initial use, that's literally all you have to do. Open it up. You don't even have to expand like I did. Like, you literally could just open the file, press save so that it adds those names in the background, and then close it out. And that's all we needed to do in NifScope. So hopefully that wasn't too scary, because I know NifScope is a very intimidating tool, but hopefully by the time you guys have finished all these tutorials, you'll have a better sense of how that works. So now we've got our cleaned up NIF file in our own folder. So now we go back into the creation kit, and now we're done with this. So this object here, this scall, we'll never really use it again per se. Actually, that's not true. We will use it, but we'll never use it in the game. It's clearly a tool for in the editor. So right now we're not worried about that. What we want to do to use in the game is we're going to create a static object. So we come to static. And now a lot of people will tell you never, ever, ever click inside or click on anything in the creation kit without typing something in the filter. And that's pretty good advice because on my computer is actually pretty fast. I've got the creation kit installed on an SSD drive, but on a slower computer, what I just did there, clicking on static without a filter in place can take a long time, even if your filter is just a bunch of random keystrokes. So that way, when you click on different things, it doesn't find anything, so it won't load it. So that's a good habit to get into as well. Or what I often do is just leave my prefix typed in there at all times. And that way, worst case scenario, I'm just getting my own items. So once you've got the static category selected, you can right click over anywhere on this right hand side of the object window and hit new, and that will bring up a new form for the type you have selected on the left there. So we want to create our first object that's going to get created in the game. So for the ID field, just like before, we want to add our own prefix. So use your prefix there. And then we're going to use something. We can't use the exact name we typed for this one, this tutorial house level 1, because that's already used by this scall. One thing you could do to get around that would be when you're naming this is add scall to the name. Or we can actually rename these. So we could just add in scall to this. And actually, you can't do it through the. No, maybe you can do it through the. Yeah, you can't do it through that window. Renaming, you've got to do through this. So let's do that. Let's we're gonna retcon our own tutorial here and say that when you're naming these, you're gonna want to name your initial one with scol at the end, and that way we can use the exact same name for the static, just minus this scall name. So if you're ever renaming something in here and you get this create new object, you're going to say no and then say yes to the confirm rename. So now we've got that. So now we can reuse this exact same name here minus the scall for our static. And that is nice and simple. Now the display name you can leave blank if you like. If you decide to go through and make your building scrappable, which is actually something not in the tutorials presently, but it's something I'll be adding down the line. I've actually released recently a Sim Settlements helper file that makes everything scrappable, especially useful for Xbox players, but even some PC players find that there's objects left behind, and this is just due to the complexities of the scripting system, and that occasionally items can get left behind, and then being able to scrap them saves users a lot of effort because then they don't have to use console commands. So if you type a display name in here, that's what will show up when they mouse over it. So we're going to go ahead and just fill that out because it just takes a second longer, but that's really the only place that is used is when the player can actually view something. The other place it's used, you'll find down the line, is when you're searching through console for help with the help command. If you type in help, a space, and then some name, and then the number, and then another space, and then the number 4, you can actually search in-game in the console for different objects. And if you don't have a display name filled out, you can't. It's really hard to find the item. All right, so we've got our ID. It's unique because we changed the other one to scall. We've got our name in there. Then you're going to hit edit next to model and then edit again. So this brings up the model data screen. And then you're edit, and you're going to find your way to your model that you created. So by default, this should start in the meshes folder, but if it doesn't, just use your Windows Navigator and navigate back to that meshes folder, to your custom folder, and then select your model. And then double check that you did grab the right one. Now, I'm not going to go through any of this stuff in this tutorial. That may be something I go over in the future as far as changing materials and things. But for now, all we want to do is select our model. And don't worry about the fact that you have all this purple that you can't see through. Like I said, if you scroll down here, you can see that everything's fine. What this represents is the 0 plane. This is kind of like the base ground. So this is actually exactly what we want to see, that your building's lined up with that. So if for some reason your building doesn't look lined up correctly on this plane, that's a big sign that you forgot to do the step of selecting the alignment helper last. So we'll go ahead and hit OK there. We've got our model in place. And then we're going to hit OK. That is, you don't have to fill out any of the rest of these boxes. This is real simple. So literally just fill in the ID, type in a name if you like, and then navigate to your model and push OK. And now you'll see our model is now here. And now this is the one we're actually going to use in the game. So far, technically, everything we've done could absolutely be used for any mod. It's not specific to Sim Settlements. Now I'm going to show you the first thing you do that's very, very Sim Settlement specific. And that is called a building plan. Now, these are something that I've created to organize all of the different pieces that make up a building in Sim Settlements and kind of control the path that it goes on as it's upgrading and over time. So wow, I really got these hiccups. Gonna get those under control. So what you're going to do is go set your filter to KG Sim, expand the items category and go to miscellaneous item. And you're looking for a thing called a building plan template. Now, building plans are essentially a non-object, so even though they're called a miscellaneous item, if you're a modder, you know that miscellaneous items are things you can generally loot. These will never actually be spawned in the game. These are simply a trick I've used to get past a limitation, which is that structure objects can't hold arrays, and this is my kind of hack to make them work anyway. So these miscellaneous objects, if you have not modded and you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Just come down to this building plan template. You're going to right click it and hit duplicate, and then you're going to end up with a copy. And now you're going to click on there so that you can rename it, and then you're going to go ahead and don't forget to change the prefix to your prefix, and then get rid of all this template copy stuff and just name it something that makes sense for your house. So we were going with tutorial house, but it's best to just keep these names the same as your similar to your building models. You'll see that I went for the base plans. I've come up with my own naming scheme, and then I've just gone 0, 1 through 10 for houses, etc. So whatever naming scheme works for you. So since I already had a tutorial house because I built one while I was writing the tutorials, now I'm building another one. We're going to add 0, 1 to this one. And then it's going to ask you to create a new object. Since we duplicated, you can say no to this. If you hadn't duplicated and you were just fiddling around with one of the existing, you would say yes. But since we duplicated, we're editing the one that we want for us, we're going to say no here, and then yes to rename. And now we've got the start of our building plan. So you'll want to double click this, and this will bring up the actual meat of the way SimSettlements works. So the first thing you'll notice is we've got building plan name by author. If you've ever looked at the plaques in SimSettlements, this is where that information is coming from. So whatever you type in here will show up as your building name. This is the you could literally type whatever you want, but it's best to just give this a name. And the reason you want to try and do this specific is so that if people have a problem with your building, they can quickly tell you which one. So the building name, you can name it, get however creative you want. I'm going to get very uncreative and just continue with tutorial house, and then type in however you want your name to show up in the game, so people know, because your buildings are going to get mixed in with other add-ons from other users and my own stuff built into SimSettlements. We want to make sure that you guys get credit for your work. So make sure you put your name. You can use your real name. I would recommend using maybe your Nexus Mods name or something not your real name, but that is up to you. And then so once you've got that done, the rest of this screen doesn't matter aside from this script here. The script is the structure I was talking about earlier. And lets you lay out all of the details of your building. Now, there's one piece in here. If you're at the time of writing this tutorial, I've started development of the first major expansion, and so there's a new field. There's actually several new fields in this stage that aren't in the tutorials right now on this screen. Don't worry about those. You don't have to use those right now, and you may never have to use those. It may be something that I only use for the official plugin. So I'm going to just show you. So don't worry about the number of properties over here. You don't have to fill them all. I'm going to show you which ones to fill. So but I'll go over what all of those do. So the building plan paths is something for the next expansion. The expansion ID, again, something that's going to be used going forward, but most likely will never be used by you guys. Level stops tells the SimSettlements what stage of your model is your actual level. So that will make more sense in a future tutorial, but just know that is something we're going to fill out. The plot type override you can pretty much ignore. We only need those when doing commercial building, so we'll get to that later. The stage item spawns holds things like your furniture and your lights and anything that's not static, that doesn't just sit there and do nothing. Anything that's not your building, basically. So your building goes in its own, your building models will go in their own structure here, and then everything else kind of goes inside of here. Test plan only. This is something I added in. It will be out in the next patch, and this is something for you guys building. If say you've got 5 houses built, you've got a 6th one not quite done, but you kind of want to release, and you don't want this 6th unfinished one showing up. You can check this in so that way it doesn't show up for the players. So that way you can keep working on your file before you finish anything. And then uniforms isn't used yet, but in a future this will allow you to set up the clothing for your NPC. So for example, if you're building a restaurant and you want them to look like a silly chef, you can totally put those objects in here, but that's not set up yet, so this basically does nothing. So for right now, the ones we're mostly focused on are level stops, stage item spawns, and stage models. And for this particular tutorial, we're literally only going to use stage models and level stops. So this is going to be nice and easy. So what we want to do is select stage models. You have two options. You can always select one of these and hit edit value over to the right, or the easier method is to just double click. And now this creates what's called an array. And all an array is an ordered list of things. In this case, we're going to use it to make building models. Now there's a lot more advanced stuff you can do with this, and that is covered in the advanced possibilities section of the tutorials. So that is something I may or may not cover in video tutorials, so if you're interested, check out that PDF. But to start, all we're going to do is click add here. Now before you touch any another button, this screen is very slow unless you do it in a particular order. So after you click add, if you press the letter S, the form type will jump for you right close to where we want. So we want static. And then the next thing you want to do is check in filter. And then you're going to type in some of the name of your building. So I'm going to type in kgsim, and then I'm going to use that little asterisk trick, and then just tutorial, and that should do it. Now, the reason you want to push the S key instead of just clicking on this menu immediately is that as soon as you start selecting things in this form type menu, it has to fill in this pick object, and it can get really, really slow, and then this process ends up being kind of one of the worst parts of this whole thing is just waiting on the creation kit. So if you as soon as you hit add, you push S, or you can push ST, it should jump you to static or close to it, and it'll save you a little bit of time. So once you've got this filter in, you pull down this list. There's only a couple things here, and we want the building we just created. So that is that static object we just created. And now you'll see, if we slide this over, essentially what the stage models is saying is that our first, you want to put these in order. Now I just missed a step, I realized, so we're gonna take a step back. I'm gonna show you guys how to fix that when you do that, because it'll happen when you're building. But essentially this is the order. Stage models represents a list of those statics that kind of get swapped in. If you've watched, in some settlements you watch those houses build, this is how that magic is done. So we're going to add in, the thing we forgot is the building materials. So we're going to follow our same process of typing ST right away. And then this time, I've already created you guys a bunch of building material piles. You don't have to use them. You can absolutely create your own. Maybe you want to use some more unique piles of building materials, or get, put some pieces, the actual pieces that make up your building, into a pile, whatever you want to do. But just to save you some time, the ones that I've created are all available for use. So we're going to type in kgsim building, and we're going to go ahead and type in star materials. I don't remember the exact name, but those stars are helpful if you can't remember if you used underscores or not. And you'll see there's a handful of building materials here. So this thing looks like it's almost entirely metal, but there is some corrugated metal. So we'll go ahead and use the corrugated metal wood pile. And then click there. Now that needs to be at number 0. So to reorder, if you did them wrong, is you click on this, and this is one of those things where I told you it takes a while. So you click on this, and there's just a long load process time. This is a just poor design decision by Bethesda to make these drop-down menus have to fill in, and then you can just reorder them. So we're going to move that down so that the building materials comes first. So whatever's at number 0, that's what appears when you first lay the plot, but before anyone starts constructing, and then each stage should come after that. So we're going to go ahead. You can actually test a building with this bare minimum amount of stuff here. So to do that, now these numbers, I mentioned the level stops. For level stops, you're going to have 3 entries, one for your level 1 building after it completes, and then one for your level 2 upgrade, one for your level 3 upgrade. And to find out what numbers you enter in, you look for the number that's next to your building model. So in our case, it's number 1. If we go back and add construction stages, this number might change, and then we'd have to go back to level stops and edit it. But for this quick test, we're going to just leave it like that. So number 1 is what we want. So we'll double click here. And again, this is one of those arrays, but this array only holds integers. So that's just whole numbers. And we're going to type in number 1. So we ignore this number field. That doesn't matter. Well, all we want to do is have 3 entries in order that correspond to the numbers next to these models. So if we had say we don't want to do building stages, we want to just get something done quick. We want to just build our 3 levels and just have them in here, 1, 2, 3. then level stops would end up being 1, 2, 3. But most likely you'll end up with 5 or 6 stages in between each one, and the level stops will end up looking like 5, 12, and 15 or something like that. So it doesn't actually matter. You don't have to worry about what those numbers are as long as they match up with these. So it's not like it's going to always be 1, 2, 3 or anything. You're looking at this number next to your model to determine those level stops. And if you ever feel like this is not clear enough because I'm on this small scale and I'm just showing you these tutorials, you can always come in and check out the SimSettlements building plans and really dig in for some ideas of how to pull stuff off. So these are a great resource, and they're all inside of the ESM, which should always be loaded when you load your ESP file. So that is the bare minimum we need to set up. So we're going to hit OK and then hit OK again, and then we're going to save, because we don't need another crash and loss after all that work we just did. In fact, we probably should have saved like 4 more times in between. So even myself, it takes a while to get into that habit. But if you've ever lost a term paper or something, I'm sure you know the pain of failing to save files, even outside of crashing programs, but power losses and stuff. All right, so now we are ready to test our first model in the game. Now, I know this tutorial, if you looked at the timer on there, it's quite long so far, but it's mostly just me talking. As you can see, there were very, very few steps to get a building set up. So let's head into the game so that you guys can know that your hard work paid off. So the first thing you're going to do is load up your Nexus Mod Manager. If you're not using the Nexus Mod Manager, you can do this in-game as well, but you're going to find your new ESP file. It should be at the bottom underneath the plugin section. You're going to check that in, and I got to make sure SimSettlements is turned on. And now see if when SimSettlements isn't on, because it's this one has a required master, you'll see it's in yellow to kind of warn you that you're missing this. See, SimSettlements disabled, you're missing that file. So we're going to go ahead and enable SimSettlements, and then we come back down here, and now that's correctly showing. So we've got our tutorial loaded, and we're going to launch the game. All right, so I've gone ahead and loaded into a game that I already had SimSettlements set up on, and that I've already collected the holotape, and I'm good to go. So I recommend you guys have a save file set aside for testing out your building model. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and create a plot of the type that you generated your building for. So we did a residential, so we're going to just create a plot. And then just get it so that the pole is in your view, and then you're going to bring up your console. You're then going to click on that utility pole, and you're going to enter in the following commands. So the first one you want to do is you need to find the form ID of your building plan. So we're going to go help, and then we're going to type part of the name we typed in for our building. So that screen where you had to put the building name by your name, that's what you're going to want to look for. So we're going to go help tutorial house, and then the number 4. Oops. And if you have any spaces when you're doing help, you need to surround it in double quotes. And then that will bring up you'll see right here, we've got miscellaneous tutorial house. Now, because I said like I had created one for the actual writing of the tutorials for the PDFs, and our new one has the same name, but I happen to know that the second one is the correct one, so we need that number. So you're going to want to jot that number down, or if we're typing in the command right here, you actually can just do it right from here. But so that tells you the building plan, and now in SimSettlements, I've written a command to test building plans quickly. So what you type in here is the letters CF for call function, then a space. Then you're going to put in double quotes the words test building plan, and that's with no spaces. So just as I'm typing on screen here, I will put this in the video comments, and it's also all in the tutorial PDFs. Then another space after your closing quote, and then this is where you're going to type in that full form ID for the building plan we want to test. So ours is 0B001EDB. Oop, I got an N there instead of a B. And then a space, and then you want to type in the number of the stage. So for this, we're going to go ahead and type in 0 so we can see that the whole thing plays out. But if you just wanted to like tweak one model and jump right to that, those numbers in that stage models screen in the creation kit, the ones that we use to type in the level stop, those numbers to the left, that's what you're typing in here, so that you can skip right to a particular stage in your building and take a peek at it. So we're going to do that. And now you'll see the for rent sign disappeared for a second because it's updating. And then when we exit here, for rent sign comes back, our materials appear, and then we take somebody, and we're going to assign it to this building, and they should build our model. And it still takes the same amount of time, even though there's no building stages. So this is going to take a few seconds here. But essentially, I think it's 1 minute by default. But if you make sure you turn off realistic build times, if that was something you're using, turn that off in the holotape. You're going to want this to be on real time so that it'll actually go through those models fairly quickly. And the more models you have, the more building stages you add in, the more rapidly they will change through. So once you get in your construction stages, which I will cover probably in the next tutorial, that will make this process all seem a little quicker. But right now, we've just got to wait for that to appear. The other thing you can do is you can skip directly to your model, so you don't have to go to this building materials. I just like to do that to make sure that everything is set up correctly. And there we go. There is our model without the right-sided wall. And that is how easy it is. So now your building is in Sim Settlements, and this guy can continue to use it as a house. Obviously, we're missing a lot of things there. We're missing the bed, we're missing any furniture, etc. But that will be covered in a future tutorial. But those little steps, even though this was a long video, most of it was just me talking. You can do all of this very, very quickly and very, very easily. So I encourage you guys to share this video around so that people see how easy it is to actually build a building for Sim Settlements. All right, I hope you guys, I hope I didn't talk too much. I hope I was clear. Please check out the PDFs in the Builder's Toolkit for additional information. They will expand upon and go through in a structured process what I just showed you. But I know a lot of you prefer to see something done and learn a little more visually. So hopefully this helped you guys out. Please give me your feedback. Let me know what maybe I should do differently for future tutorials, or if there's anything you'd like me to cover in specific. All right, guys, enjoy the mod, enjoy the toolkit, make some awesome stuff, and take care.